So God sends 3 angels to Abraham. And each of these angels had a specific purpose. The first angel to tell Sarah Imenu that she is going to have a child. The second to destroy Sedom. And the third to heal Abraham. And then to go save Lot. So they came 3. Next is, the angels come to the city of Sedom. How many angels? Only 2. And who was that? That was not the first, because there was no need for him anymore. He came to tell Sarah. It was the second to destroy Sedom, and the third who healed Abraham to now come and save Lot. So these 2 angels, appearing as human beings, make their way to Sedom. Now they come to Sedom, and Lot, who grew up in the house of Abraham, had in his own nature to want to host. He was very hospitable. Mind you, Sedom had a culture of the most disgusting cultures in the world. They forbade hosting, they forbade even buying things. The only way to acquire something was either by stealing it from someone or killing them. They used to be like a terrorist organization. They would come into people's homes in the middle of the night when they would be sleeping, and they would examine the difference in height between the person sleeping on the bed and the size of the bed itself. If the person's legs were dangling, the Gemara says they would come and they would shorten their legs in order that they fit their bed right. Because it would be such a disgrace. How could you sleep on a bed that's smaller than you? How could you be bigger than it? And vice versa. They would come and they would see that there was a foot room. The bed was bigger than the individual. They would come and they would stretch the person to be as tall and as long as the bed, dislocating their shoulders, their hips, their knees. Horrible, horrible people. And that was just part of the ridiculous traditions that they used to keep. But again, no hosting. Anyone who hosted would be put to death. So what did these people? They were bored. They had nothing good to do with their lives. They would just be looking always to see what can we catch someone doing to do something wrong to them and to harm them. And lo and behold, they spied these 2 guests who they thought were regular people come to the house of Lot. Lot brings them in, about to serve them a meal. Next thing, knock, knock, knock on the door. Who is it? The terrorists. The Sedomites. Open the door. Lot answers, why? Send us those 2 people that came to you. Let us have them. Lot says, no, they're my guests. Take my 2 daughters instead. Do as you wish with them. Ridiculous. And they keep on knocking. No, we want those guests. You know that we're not allowed any guests here in this city. They keep on knocking and they're about to break the door. And I quote to you the verse. The verse says, we're in chapter 19, verse 11. Ve'et ha'anashim asher petach habayit. So all these Sedomites, they're by the threshold of the door. Hiku basanverin mikaton ve'ad gadol vayil'u limtso ha'patach. So these angels, which look like people, they come and they struck them with blindness. We'll see soon how. And now they were all blind. They couldn't find the latch and the doorknob how to get in. This was just to buy them time in order to escape. So listen to what they did. There's a very interesting word. The word is sanverim. What's sanverim? So Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch explains that the word sanverim is an amalgamy, which means it's a putting 2 words together. It's a mixture of 2 words. Which words? Sine, which means to be poked or prickled by thorns, and or, and light. So what did they do? They came out and they omitted a certain light which poked their eyes and blinded them. That's what they came and they did. Now, why were they punished by losing their eyesight? I mean, the angels could have done many things. They could have burnt them to death. They could have, there's so many things. Why were they punished by becoming blind? So the Zera Shimshon explains that the way God always works, it's midah keneged midah. It's tit for tat. The way you act is the way others will act towards you. The way you act is the way God will act towards you. And what was the root of the sin of the Sedomites? Is that they used to look at others and they were jealous and they were envious. How could they have that and not me? They were, as we say in Hebrew, tzara ayin. They saw very small. Anything they saw, they wanted for themselves. No one could have anything. They either killed for it or stole for it, but it was theirs. This is the horrible midah of ayin hara, having an evil eye. And that's what led the Sedomite people to the lowest of low, into their ultimate destruction. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu paid them back. You guys sin through your eyes, that's how you're going to be attacked. That's how you're going to have your downfall. Going to be through the eyes. And that's why they were blinded, the Zera Shimshon explains. Yet, the Talmud tells us that Melach Sedomit, the salt of Sedom, blinds. If it gets into your eyes, it will blind you. Yet there's other sources that tell us having salt on the table is actually something which brings on protection. So the Zera Shimshon is questioning, is salt something which blinds, or is salt something which protects? Now listen to his answer. He answers based on the Midrash, that Rashi himself quotes later on the Parashat, that Lot comes to his wife and says, we're preparing a meal for these angels. Well, he didn't know the angels, sorry. We're preparing him a meal for these guests, the two guests. Lot himself prepared it. You know what he asked his wife? Honey, can you please bring salt to the table? His wife said, again, you're starting with these traditions? I don't want these traditions over here. And she didn't bring the salt. The Zera Shimshon explains, since she did not bring the salt to the table, which salt actually is a mechanism of protection, when the angel's light came and omitted and blinded the Sedomite people, was because there was no salt on the table. If there would have been salt on the table, they would have been protected from the salt. But since no salt was at the table, they became blind. And since this episode happened around there being a lack of salt, the salt from Sedom, from that place, forevermore will be so sharp and strong that it will blind. But in general, salt actually protects. But this is not the end of salt. We have more salt in this week's Torah portion. Move a little later. The angels tell them quickly, we need to escape. This whole city is going down. As we know, even Avraham Avinu tried to save the city. He couldn't find any tzaddikim. So the angels tells Lot, Lot, grab your wife, your kids, your son-in-laws if they want to come, and let's bounce. We got to get out of here. This place is about to rain fire now. So Lot tries to convince his daughters to come. By the way, Lot had 4 daughters. 2 married, 2 single. His 2 married daughters and son-in-laws laughed at him like a laughing stock, and they stayed and they died. So Lot is on the escape mode with his wife, his 2 daughters, and the malach, the one that's going to save them, because the other one is actually going out and destroying. Now, they tell them one thing, and one thing only. Do not look back when the city is being destroyed. The reason for this, our commentary says, don't look at someone when they fall. Don't look at something or someone when they are down and being distracted. Even though they were Rishaim, they were wicked people. Wicked city, horrible traditions. But don't look back. And Lot's wife couldn't resist, as it says in chapter 19, verse 26, Vatabet ishto me'aharav, vatehi netziv melach. Lot's wife turns around and she becomes a pillar of salt. And that's how she dies. The Midrash tells us, what an interesting way to pass away. I've never seen anyone die because they turned into salt. Is it like gargoyles or something? It's very, very interesting. Yet the Midrash and Rashi quotes that since she sinned with salt, she was punished with salt. And what was the sin, as we just said? Lot comes and says, bring salt to the table. She says, no, don't bring that tradition over here. The Zera Shimshon says, who says that she didn't want to bring the salt? Maybe the tradition she was speaking about was hosting people. But then why did she speak about it only after, when it came time to serve them the meal, not when they brought them in? And therefore he proves that she specifically sinned with salt, and this was her rationale. She said, salt may protect, but she was now influenced by her surrounding, by the city of Sedom. And she said, no one here does this, we won't either. But the Zera Shimshon goes deeper. He quotes to us a Midrash, the Rama in the Shulchan Aruch, in chapter 167, brings it down also, and says, we have an obligation at a meal to have salt on the table. And do you know why? The reason why salt needs to be on the table is because when you put salt on the table, you now make the table a mizbeach, an altar. Now, what was the purpose of the altar in the time of the temple? It was a mizbeach kapara. It was an altar which atoned. It's what brought Hashem and the Jewish people closer. The Jewish people drifted away. How did they buy back their closeness and their relationship with God? By bringing sacrifices in the temple. After the temple was destroyed, what can we do? Prayer, mitzvot, hesed, granted. But our table atones. At every single sacrifice that was brought on the altar always had salt. It was the only common denominator ingredient that was for every single sacrifice. So when we take salt and when we put salt on our table, we are making our table a mizbeach, an altar. What is salt represent? It represents protection. On a physical level, salt represents protection because it actually is something which preserves. Before there were freezers and fridges, the way to preserve anything was through salt. So on a physical level, salt is protection. At a spiritual level, it makes our tables like an altar, which was the greatest of protection. Lot's wife said, we don't need protection. The society we live in doesn't believe in protection. The Talmud says, do you know why Sedom got to the lowest of the low? Talmud in Masechet Sanhedrin says, because they were blessed with an abundance. They were so affluent. It's like we said by the Dora Mabul, the generation of the flood. The reason why they got so low is because they had so much. So too Sedom, they were so blessed financially and successfully that they were sinning and they did everything. They felt invincible. They said that no one can beat us. They weren't even scared of the court of law. They weren't scared of mazikin, of spiritual demons. They were not scared of anything. So they did not believe in salt. Lot's wife started adapting to her surrounding and said, we live in a place where no one is scared of anything. We don't need salt at the table. But Lot was really scared. They came and they told him that they're about to destroy the country. They're about to destroy the city. My wife, bring the salt quickly. She said, we don't need any of that. Don't open your mouth. Don't open your eyes to the Satan. No salt. And because she sinned by not bringing the salt, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made it that she passed away through salt. And this is a tremendous lesson I think we can all learn. And that is, we should never discount, disrespect anything or anyone. And I'll quote the Mishnah. It's a very famous Mishnah. It's the Mishnah in the 4th chapter of Pirkei Avot, Mishnah 3. Hu haya omer, al tivaz lechol adam, v'al timaflig lechol davar. Don't disgrace anyone and don't discount anything. Shen lecha adam shen lo shav en lecha davar shen lo makom. Because everybody has their time to shine. And everything has their time of success. Even though now it's low, even though now this guy's reputation is low, he's a nobody, she's a nobody, this item is worthless now. Life is a circle. Everything comes and goes around. Rabbeinu Yonah explains, he says as follows, we always need to be worried or at least doubtful of anything. Even if we think now, today, it's not something dangerous, we still need to understand that it can be dangerous. And we need to worry for it. That was Lot's wife's problem. She said, no one's worried over here. No one's scared of anything. No need for salt. She sinned by not bringing the salt to add a protection. And that's how she passed away. Because she disregarded something, that's what, so to say, disregarded her. One last thing I want to mention with the topic of salt. Nowadays there's a halakha, and I'll quote to you from Shulchan Aruch, chapter 181. Halakha Aleph says, Mayim Achronim chova. There's two times we wash our hands when we eat. We take the kli and we wash 3 times. 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3 before we eat the bread. That's called in the Gemara Mayim Rishonim. The beginning waters, the first waters before the meal, to make sure our hands are clean. There's also called Mayim Achronim, and it's a chovah, it's an absolute requirement. Why? The Talmud, the Mefarshim tell us. Mishum melach Sedomit. Because of the salt of Sedom. What does that mean? Because of the salt of Sedom? That means when people eat, our hands get involved in the food. If there's something on our hands which are strong and sharp, or melach sedomit itself on our fingers, and we put it in our eyes, we could get blinded. It's very dangerous. So therefore we need to wash our hands down. The Mishnah Brura says, even though you might not think that there's melach sedomit where you are, we live in Florida, are we eating sedomite salt? The answer is maybe. Yes, maybe no. Because that salt is distributed and sold all over the world. It could be that it's in your food. And therefore, whether you think you have the salt or you don't have the salt, we still need to do Mayim Achronim. And it is a chovah, it's an obligation. To the point where in halakha, if you do not have enough water to wash your hands in the beginning and at the end, do only a little in the beginning, and make sure for the end of your meal you have a little bit of water to wash at least the fingertips, because it is mishum sakana, it could be of danger. So this is the source of the reason why we do Mayim Achronim. We do the Mayim Achronim because Lot's wife did not bring salt to the table, which adds as a protection, and that's what brought to the blinding of the Sedomites. And then when she turned around to look at the city being destroyed, burnt to flames, she herself turned into a pillar of salt, and the remnants of the whole city of Sedom actually was salt, with a strong, destructive power. So there's 2 types of salt. There's the salt with the aspect of protection, because it brings it to be like a mizbeach, and then there is the salt of Sedom, which is dangerous and could bring on blindness to one who gets it in their eyes. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless us to always have salt at our tables, specifically by Seudot Shabbat, which make our table elevated to the level of an altar, which brings us close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You know what it means by making your table like an altar? It means that, where do we eat from? We eat from the table. How does the food get to the table? From my hard work, from the sweat of my brow, or from Hashem? When we realize that it comes from Hashem, and we're eating the food Hashem gave us at our table, and we have the salt there to make it as a stamp that this is our altar, and we have our salt there, which serves as a protection, that changes our meal, which could be only physical and even animalistic, and raises it to a higher level of connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, just as the altar did, the Mizbeach did in the time of the Beit HaMikdash. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, bless us all to see the rebuilding of the Beit HaMikdash, to see the Mizbeach in full operation, with the Kohanim, Leviim, and even Bnei Israel eating directly from the Mizbeach. Amen ve'amen.